PixMix is brought to you by the Arun Show, broadcasting on Liberated Syndication, youtube.com/Arun Show, and is in association with the Old School Lane podcast.
PixMix is brought to you by oldschoollane.blogspot.com and is associated with the Arun Show.
Welcome to PixMix, the show where we randomly review a Pixar film. My name is Aaron.
My name is Patricia.
Hey Patricia, how's it going?
It's going great. I can't believe that we've already completed all of the Pixar movies that we were going to be discussing throughout PixMix. And it's just... time is going by so quickly, you know?
Yeah, it's so extraordinary that we finally got through them all because, Pixar films are quite, even though they're like an hour and a bit in regards to time length, but to go through probably more than 19 hours worth of Pixar film is not an achievement to be flouted at, I don't think. So it's something we did pretty well. So people are wondering, well, since we've kind of reviewed all the Pixar films and The Incredibles 2 hasn't exactly come out yet, or we've not had a chance to do a review on it, some people are going to be thinking, well, what are we going to do next? And no, we're not going to do Boo as a hoax or anything like that. So
I wish.
Yeah, if only. But instead, we decided we're going to do the top five worst and the top 5 best Pixar films, in our opinion. And so some people are going to be sitting there and saying, well, didn't you rate like 8 or 9 of them 10 out of 10? So how on earth can you come up with the best 5? So to make things a bit more interesting, we decided to bring in a mystery judge. And we can finally announce to everybody who the mystery judge is. And so, Patricia, do you want to know who that was?
Yes, the mystery judge that we have decided to stalk in their sleep and tell them, you better judge our stuff or else, was Dan the Pixar Man.
Dan the Pixar Fan. And Dan
the Pixar Fan. He's a guy too, you know.
Yeah. So Dan the Pixar Fan was our mystery judge. And so, unfortunately, though, he's quite impartial. He's not very partial to Pixar films either. And some of the films he rated was also 10 as well. So instead, he gave us a ranking of the best to worst of all the Pixar films, and so through some mathematical equations, which I've done through this, I've decided to put together this whole list mathematically of what the worst 5 and the best 5 are. So, Patricia, why don't we start by eating the shit sandwich, and let's do the 5 worst to start off with.
Okay, so everybody grab your appetites because we're digging really deep into the crap.
Yeah. Okay, so basically how the scoring works is that me and Patricia scored the films out of 10, and they basically through the way the ranking system works for Dan the Pixar Fan, we managed to generate like an average score of between all of us, and so the scoring is actually changed for all the films that have now reviewed. So basically, if you noticed before that, say for example, Inside Out, Toy Story 3, The Incredibles, Coco, and so forth, were all rated 10. They're not 10 anymore. And so it's going to be interesting to see what they're all rated now. And Dan the Pixar Fan has been very influential in these scores themselves. So let's get on with the 5 worst Pixar films. And so, Patricia, are you ready?
If I must.
Okay.
If we must. So
right. So, according to me, Patricia, and Dan the Pixar Fan, the fifth worst Pixar film that we have that now has an average score of 4.5 out of 10. Keep this in mind. One of us, I think one of us said it was a 5, and one of us said it was a 4. So now the average score is now 4.5 out of 10. Is Monsters University.
Yeah, I was the one who said 5.
You were the one who said 5. So
yes, because the reason why I said 5 was because of the message in the end. That message, I will admit, was the best part of the entire movie, in which it's basically just saying just because you're told to do something in order for you to feel great, or that's what's according to what everybody says that you're supposed to do, that doesn't mean you have to follow what everybody says. And that is why I feel that that was just slightly above a 4 that you gave it. But everything else, that movie just sucked.
Yeah, and for anyone who has a problem with like, well, it had a really great message, so it deserves a higher score than that. Well, The Wizard of Oz had a really great message of "There's no place like home," but there was still like a huge amount of spectacular movie to go with it. So it's
Exactly.
yeah.
I think that when you posted, all of our scores onto your social media, I think somebody did say, "Oh, I give it a higher score because that message changed my life." And that's great. If you feel that way, that's fantastic. But I feel that a message in a movie is not enough for the complete package.
Yeah, and I go back to saying this like again, it's not what we wanted. Like this
No.
is not the movie we wanted. We wanted a sequel, and instead we got this prequel. And again, I feel like we're just going to go over like all the complaints of this movie again, and I don't think we really have more to add to it. Really, all we can just say is that it's there. It's probably okay for one sitting, but then after that, it basically suffers from Brave syndrome. Basically, it's like it was all right there for one sitting, and then after that, we're not going to talk about this prequel again. I don't
No,
think
we're
after
not,
that.
because you can already see it in Revenge of the Nerds and Animal House. I mean, it's already there. Monsters University could have been so much more, and we did discuss about in the Monsters University PixMix episode that Disney was making a division, and they were going to create a whole bunch of movies that essentially got scrapped. There was the Finding Nemo 2, there was Monsters University 2, and there was Toy Story 3, which had the different story where, all the Buzz Lightyears were being recalled into Taiwan. So, yeah, it's a shame
You
that
know,
Monsters Inc. 2
on
never
that
came out.
subject, how do you think that if that let's say that studio was still around and they actually did make these movies, don't you think imagine how terrible they would be if they didn't have the Pixar touch?
Oh man, I mean
I hate it.
that's rough. I mean, they were doing it to try to upstage Pixar because they were pretty much just like owning them back in the
I'm
day.
kind of thinking these movies, if they were still in the hands of these people, would have just been a more polished version of Video Binguedo, that Brazilian company that made all those knockoff films.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. And also,
Ratatouille.
Ratatouille, yes, Ratatouille. Oh my God! And that car movie, I don't remember what it's
Little
called, but
cars.
yeah, that's the one. You know what? If that would have been the case, then I wouldn't be surprised. You know how Toy Story 2 was originally supposed to be a direct-to-video movie? I wouldn't be surprised if maybe that would have happened, because this was when Disney direct-to-video movies were at its prime, or at least on their way out.
Yeah. So that was number 5 of our worst, and so it gets worse from here, ladies and gentlemen.
Yay.
Okay, number 4 is it had a average score of 6 from me and Patricia, and now it has an average score of 4 out of 10. It is The Good Dinosaur.
Oh man, that movie went through so many problems behind the scenes, and it shows, because that movie, for all the cool things that it tried to bring in, like an alternative universe in which what happens if the meteor that killed the dinosaurs didn't happen, and it showed off an alternative 2015. Let's be honest, there was no point to that. There was no point in even making it a dinosaur movie.
It was a tech demo. Like I said before, it was just it's kind of like I put it on the same level as Bug Bunny.
Yes.
Yeah, I put it on the same level as that. It's just there basically just to demonstrate how beautiful something is. It doesn't really have like a story you can like latch onto. Yeah, it has a bit of an emotional scene with that cave kid, and at the end when they have that family. But I keep looking at that scene and thinking, they probably ate him afterwards. That's why I removed the emotion from that one. I just say, oh yeah, they kidnapped him over the hill and then they ate him afterwards because they were cannibals.
Sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, you could tell that they were really trying hard to make Arlo a sympathetic character. You can try you can tell that they were trying really hard to, have a strong relationship between Arlo and Spot, and it was trying to build up this big world with all these characters that they met up with along the way, and they were trying to bring a lot of conflict and stuff like that, but it just all falls short. I mean, like I said before, it definitely feels like a Western.
It feels like Arlo needed some spunk. He needed that. In the '90s when they were like those characters that had like that did have that adventurous edge and but had a little spike attitude and spunk with them as well. And some of them were like just your stereotypes, and some of them actually came off pretty good. But Arlo needed some of that, man.
Because Arlo is probably one of the most least interesting protagonists ever in a Pixar movie. Like, we couldn't root for him because he was so cowardly and he screwed up so many times that we couldn't sympathize with him.
You done goofed, Dino.
You done goofed. Yes.
Yeah, it was pretty. Sure, that's what they should have called it. The good doofusaur. It's like.
You know what? You win. You win, Aaron. Congratulations.
Yeah, there we go. So, we're getting through these quite quickly, actually, just looking at it. So, that was number 4 in our worst list, and now we go on to number 3. So, we gave this an average score of 4.5 out of 10, and now it has an average score of 3 out of 10. It is Cars 3.
Oh, man. Like, here's the thing. You see, Cars 3 was the first movie that we saw in PixMix, and we had no history of the Cars franchise other than, hearing it from various people and watching a few reviews. So we were going on this completely blind. And I think that out of all the sequels to the franchises, like, with Toy Story 2 and 3 and Finding Dory, this is hands down the worst way to introduce a new audience to your franchise.
Yeah, and I just think it was. On top of that as well, after watching Cars, it kind of makes it feel like less of a film when you think about it, because if you notice, the introductions are actually are no different from one another. It's just Lightning McQueen basically saying "I am Speed" and pretty much doing the same thing again. And so it's like so for me, when the minute I saw Cars 3, I thought, okay, there is a bit of uniqueness to this, but then after I saw Cars, I was like, nah, this is all gone now.
Yeah, and like you said before in the Cars 3 PixMix episode, that Owen Wilson doesn't sound any older compared to in the previous 2 movies, where they make him out to be like this old washed up has-been. Again, when I discussed about from Metal Gear Solid to Metal Gear Solid 4, you can definitely tell that Snake has aged tremendously, and he sounds that way too, and you can tell how tired he is. Owen Wilson just couldn't pull it off with, oh, I'm this old car and all of these younger cars are racing past me. I just was never convinced. And then, of course, there's that stupid cop-out ending in which he let Cruz finish his race that he'd been working so hard for throughout this entire movie. And I get the idea about like passing the torch, but when your movie was built up to proving to everyone wrong about you not being a has-been and you can be able to keep up with the young kids, it just fell apart for me, and it was just this
should have been this should have been basically Creed. I think this is what they tried to do the Creed story and they did it totally wrong. And so I think it would have been better if let's say that car that basically was somewhat the antagonist of the film that came in and what was the name? I can't even remember the name of that car.
Jackson?
Yeah, like imagine if it was Jackson, like he was too like he was too cocky and he was too full of himself, and so he always kept blowing his races every time he kept going on the floor, and then he goes on a quest basically to go find Lightning McQueen to basically train him better. Like I think that would have been a better kind of like Cars 3. In my opinion, and then you would have like a passing of the torch moment to either him or maybe even Cruz for that matter. Like,
sure, I mean,
and then do that.
And you know what I mean with Cruz, just constantly was behind the scenes, knew all of the latest technological stuff, training Lightning, and then we find out later that you're my hero, you're my idol. I always wanted to be like you, and there was something there, but the execution of it just was like all over the place.
Yeah. I mean, imagine if it was like, Lightning McQueen walks in and is like, what's going on here? There's all this like virtual reality stuff. It's like and let's say they were treating them like really softly, so like they were basically being pandered like they were already like celebrities and stuff like that. Yet they'd not even like finished a lap, let alone finished a race. And then Lightning McQueen comes in, teaches them like hardball, the same way that Hudson Hornet did. And like took him out into Radiator Falls and brought him up the same way, and then got him into the race and got him to win a Piston Cup, and then that's the passing of the torch, and then Lightning McQueen then becomes Fabulous McQueen. Like that would have been a way better story than what they did here.
Yeah, and I have a really strong feeling what's going to be number one, so I'm going to actually save the story for later, but.
There is one thing I think we should address before this. During our reviews of Cars, we did actually piss off a lot of Cars fans.
We did.
We did. Let me safely say this because a lot of people took this personally, like we were attacking fans of Cars. We're not attacking fans of Cars. If you like Cars, then great. All power to you. I'm very happy for you that you do like Cars. But this isn't a personal attack on you. This is an attack on Pixar for deciding to basically take a story and instead of thinking of doing something intelligent with it, instead of using it as a cash grab and selling loads of merchandise. That's basically our problems here.
Yeah, that's true. Just because we don't like the movie does not mean that we don't like you.
Yeah, that's basically what we're going for there. So that's that addressed.
All right.
Anyway, we're moving on to the second worst Pixar film. It scored an average between me and Patricia 4 out of 10. This has now gone down to 2.5 out of 10. It is Brave.
Otherwise known as Wasted Potential, the movie.
A missed opportunity, the movie. Like, this could have been Pixar's grand opportunity to do something incredibly different with a Disney princess. And, mind you, I guess you could probably say it wasn't their intention maybe to begin with, because it was Disney's decision to put Merida into the royal court, not Pixar's. So it was. I guess you could say they were maybe trying to do something radically different. I guess from the other Disney princesses, but the execution was terrible. To say the least.
And very similar to The Good Dinosaur, it went through a lot of behind the scenes issues.
Mm-hmm. And it just gave us. It didn't really give us all that memorable characters either.
No, the characters are not memorable. The story's not memorable. I mean, in fact, it just goes like from either completely dull, completely mean-spirited, or just random, bizarre, out of nowhere, and then it just kind of peters out in the end. There were some bits and pieces of good moments, though. And we're not trying to say that this movie was like all around terrible, but there were some. I mean, there's a reason why we were just so upset about Brave, because we knew it could have been so much better. This was Pixar's huge attempt of trying to make a princess movie that was not about the princess being a damsel in distress or basically like wanting more or anything that the Disney formula has done ever since Snow White. We felt that they were trying to, basically just be the next step towards a contemporary Disney princess. But sadly, it did not work. And, this came out like around the same time as like Frozen. And then a few years later, we would have Moana. And sadly, Merida with her, I mean, we do admit that, she does have a lot of enthusiasm and she has a lot of spunk, but it couldn't really carry the movie. And of course, that whole thing about the mother turning into a bear, just like, why? It just came out of nowhere.
It was just like, again, it was like, it felt so Family Guy. It's like, again, I say, Peter, I can't believe you turned the queen into a bear. It's like, it's just, it was that. Mind you, it's like, in regards to Merida herself, I still hold out for, hopefully, that if they decide, they've been doing these, superhero team movies and stuff like that, and obviously we've got Wreck-It Ralph 2 coming down the line somewhere, and obviously they're going to do something with the Disney princesses with that. I'm really hoping that they're going to do, like, a Disney princess team movie, and if they do that they show off Merida as kind of like a more, outdoory, kind of like gritty, Disney princess princess, so she's having to basically drag around, I don't know, like Aurora or something like that. It's like, she's like, wait, you go in the mud and you like ride around and stuff like that, and get really into the Revenger, and then Merida's just kind of like, oh, you're just stop being so pussy. Come help me fight this bad guy.
Aaron? This reminds me of that Robot Chicken short in which they had all the Disney princesses up to Merida when she was coming in for the first time, and they're having like this meeting, and then like there was like a huge war against the Disney princesses, and Merida basically just like decapitates everybody. That definitely reminds me of that. But
yeah. Isn't it amazing that Robot Chicken can get Merida right more than Disney can?
My God.
What an alternative reality we all live in at the moment. It's crazy.
Yeah, that's true. So, bottom line, Brave was just probably, in my opinion, like the most disappointing Pixar movie I've seen yet, in which I felt that there could have been so many good things happening to it, but because of a lot of behind the scenes issues and the original writer leaving, and then there was like rewrites and then all that stuff, it just couldn't save it. I mean, it's just really sad to know that, their attempt of a Pixar princess just fell apart, and I don't think we'll ever see an attempt like that again.
Do you know what they needed? This needed to be kind of like a prequel to another movie that showed Merida off as a tough girl. I think the way Merida should have been introduced should have been like in her prime. In my opinion, and then after that, if you wanted to do like an origin story with and you had like Brave as that, like I would probably accept that because I've accepted that with Far Cry 3. But in regards to the way this was done was wrong. And the fact that Disney have done this and Pixar has done this, it's like it's a shame, really. But
this should have been the movie that should have gotten them out of the Pixar slump, because before Brave was Cars 2. And we thought that, the original Cars, they had Ratatouille, and they had Up, and they had WALL-E, and then Toy Story 3. They did okay, but nope. This would be the beginning of the Pixar slump that lasted for 5 years.
Yeah, it was the time when you really thought, there was a time when you thought Pixar just couldn't do wrong, and then all of a sudden their mortality was just there, clear on display.
Yeah.
And, But everybody, unfortunately, if you think that's the worst of the worst, it does get worse than that. And because we're about to go on to what we consider the worst Pixar film of all time.
Prepare to be shocked, said no one.
Okay, we gave this film an average, me and Patricia, an average rating of 2.25 out of 10. And now, with a average score of 1.875 out of 10, is Cars 2.
Of course. What else was it going to be? Seriously, when we saw this movie, we were just completely shocked that they changed everything that was from the original. It was a different genre. It focused on a different character. And the story just went all over the place that we couldn't catch up with it. We were just like, what is this? I mean, seriously, Mater is the main character. It turns into a spy flick, and then you had this like story about with this environmentally friendly energy that was being tempered with, and every car was like not working properly. I have no idea what they were thinking.
You know what? Remember the beginning? Remember the origin episode of Freakazoid when the Scotsman got thrown out of the building? Out of the window. That should have happened to the guy who said, I wonder if Larry the Cable Guy can carry the film.
Yeah. That meme in which like there's a whole bunch of corporate execs who are talking about like, we need to make a new sequel for Pixar. What should we do? Finding Nemo 2, Monsters Inc. 2. How about if we do a sequel on Cars? And then the leader is just like looking at him and he just throw them out the window. It's that should have happened.
Oh boy! I mean, this is the thing though. It's this spy, the idea of like doing this type of spy film. I mean, it would work for with any other spy movie for me. It would even work for a Fast and Furious movie, in my opinion. But
it would work for Mission Impossible. It would work for James Bond.
Probably, yeah.
If you want to make it into a joke, it would work for Johnny English or Pink Panther. But no, not for not for Cars 2.
Well, I just think for me when I was looking at it all, I was thinking, yeah, someone must have been getting ideas from Fast and the Furious when they were looking at all this. The idea of, like, a car going around trying to escape other cars and trying to solve mysteries and stuff like that. I don't know. It's like it was.
Yeah.
I think someone decided to, like, binge watch all the Fast and Furious movies and then decided to go onto Knight Rider and then then took a load of LSD and thought, oh hey, let's combine all this stuff together. It's
Sure.
And all the pretty colours. It's like it's just and Larry the Cable Guy.
And Larry, yes, that is your cherry on top of this mediocrity.
Yeah. So. I mean, we really need to go into a massive amount of detail of why we don't like this film. Like,
no, but there is one more. There is one more thing I want to bring up right before we continue on. So, I'm going to get into a little controversy here. So I'm sure you guys already know that if you listen to the previous episode of PixMix that we did about John Lasseter, who's going to be leaving around December time.
Oh, yeah.
So there has been an article that came out recently discussing about somebody who formerly worked at Pixar. And he was the one who claims to have originally came up with the idea of Cars. And there was like a concept art being shown, and apparently like he pitched it to John Lasseter and he didn't listen to him. And apparently this guy was like really hard to work with because he was like really stubborn and he can only listen to like various people that had a lot of patience with him. And so around that time, around the early to mid 2000s was when he was fired. Mm-hmm. And then a few years later, long story short, Cars came out and became like a huge success. So if this story is true, then John Lasseter stole the idea of Cars from somebody who he didn't like, that he apparently was a lot of trouble with everybody. And in the end, he's making like a bunch of money off of it. And the guy is pretty much bitter with it. In fact, I think I even heard that he wasn't even invited to the premiere.
Oh, he wouldn't have been, would he? It's like, it makes me wonder if they did that to spite him.
Yeah. So if that is the case, I mean, John Lasseter was already a degenerate scumbag, but this is like, wow, this is like really low.
Well, doesn't it just show what the Cars? I mean, again, we don't want to attack the fans of Cars, but the Cars franchise, it's just a troubled child, isn't it? It's it's the child where it's been taken away by Child Protective Services. It's had a miserable life, and now here it is, and somehow it's like popular and famous or whatever, and it's like the troubled times of a celebrity. When you think
it's like Lindsay Lohan.
Well, I mean, I won't go as far as Lindsay Lohan. But,
okay, fine, not Lindsay Lohan.
It's just, I think it's incomparable. I think to any trashy celebrity that we have out there. I think.
Fine. We not even the Kardashians.
Yeah, not even the Kardashians. No.
Okay, fair enough.
So anyway,
I think we're done here.
Yeah, I think we're done here as well. So, tell you what, actually, before we get into the top five, or before we do that, shall we get into the dishonorable mentions?
Sure.
The things that didn't actually make the list, but did fall under it. So I'll give everyone the list here. So the four lists that were under here were Cars, A Bug's Life, WALL-E, and Finding Dory.
Yeah.
So they were basically the dishonorable mentions of that. And,
and
which
to
is
be fair, like not a lot of them were like really awful. It's just that I think that for the most part, I mean, especially with A Bug's Life, I want to talk about that first because A Bug's Life was the second Pixar movie that ever came out, and it had a huge coattail to follow with Toy Story. And at the time, it was really successful. A lot of people liked the movie. It made a good amount of money, not as much money as Toy Story, but it was a pretty good movie for its time. It came out a few weeks after Ants, and that was what kickstarted the DreamWorks, lineup. And then, of course, after we had gotten, Toy Story 2, Monsters, Inc., Finding Nemo, and The Incredibles, have like all these hits, like boom, 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 boom. A Bug's Life just kind of like pushed even much further to the wayside. So a lot of people just look at it as like, it was a good movie for its time, but it's since been replaced by better Pixar movies.
Yeah. Okay, so before we get into the top five ones, we actually have a participation award.
Woohoo!
And the participation award goes to Up.
Yay!
So it's just there, wrenched in the middle. So originally, me and Patricia gave it 7.5 out of 10, and Dan the Pixar Fan basically made that an average score of 5.5 out of 10. So it's just wedged in the middle there between all the
To
other
be
films.
fair, I mean, there is a reason why it's wedged in the middle because I mean, we cannot deny how much of a masterpiece the first 10 minutes of Up was.
Yeah.
It is incredible. And then like afterwards, it was leading up to something really interesting, with Carl Fredricksen having to move on from his wife and living like a really grouchy life, and then almost losing, pretty much losing his house after he attacked the construction worker.
Yeah,
And then
but saying all of that, doesn't it make you want to see another movie with Carl and
Ellie.
Ellie? Yeah, a
Yes,
prequel.
absolutely. I
If
mean, that would have
anything
been.
that demands a prequel, it's this. When you think about it.
Yeah, unfortunately, what kind of weighs the movie down for us is that Russell was very mismanaged. Like, instead of a Boy Scout who is the best Boy Scout who has every single badge except for helping an elderly person badge, he should have been somebody who had no badges. And, this badge would have been like the easiest badge for him to get. Instead of Russell trying to, do all this so he can, impress his dad. It should have been the case that maybe he joined the Boy Scouts because his dad won so many Boy Scout badges, because he did mention that later in the movie. And, the fact that we do know that he has a stepmom and that they barely call him, so he's pretty much alone. And he kind of looks at Mr. Fredricksen as like a father figure. It should have been pushed a lot stronger. And then, of course, there is Charles Muntz. We already talked about how this guy's motivation, it's pretty unnecessary in this point in time where he's a really old guy and he's trying to grab this bird so that he can be able to prove a point to a bunch of committees where, after he was ashamed of, not being able to capture it. And then he just spends his whole life trying to find ways to bring the bird back. With him being that old, and if he does come back and he does accomplish his goal, it would be pretty much a fruitless accomplishment, because most likely all the people that he wanted to prove that he got the bird are most likely dead.
Yeah.
So
the likelihood is like
he's
not gonna. I don't think he's gonna rationalize that in his mind. I think he's. If from the looks of it, he looks like he is a proper, recluse hermit, though basically just keeps a load of dogs for company. So I think at this point, I think you could say that he has totally lost his mind at this point.
Yeah, that's true. But still, even if he were to accomplish his goal at the end, it's like you said, he would. The moment that he would have landed, he would have immediately gotten arrested.
Yeah, maybe.
And then, of course, let's not forget about that climax, that over-the-top, ridiculous climax with the dogs flying on the airplanes that just completely came out of nowhere.
Yeah, it's like yeah, you can definitely tell someone's lost the plot when you're teaching your dogs how to fly. It's like. Yeah, that's just crazy to me. So, anyway, winner of the participation award, Up. So,
yes.
There we go.
Congratulations for showing up.
Cool. Okay, it's time to get into the exciting part of the show. This is our top 5 rated Pixar films for PixMix. So, I hope you all enjoy them. So, coming in at number 5, we gave it a score of 10, and now it has a score of 8 out of 10. Sorry, an average score of 9 out of 10, I should say, is Finding Nemo.
Yes, and I've already talked to you guys about how much I love this movie. As mentioned before, when I was in high school, I worked at a museum where it had an aquarium. And whenever I would be at the aquarium to clean up the area, there would be so many kids gathering around, looking at all the fish that we had. We had clownfish, and we had pretty much all the fish from Finding Nemo. And there would be so many kids pointing at it and saying, like, "Look, Mommy, there's Nemo." And then eventually, when I did see the movie, and I just absolutely loved it. It made me laugh. It made me cry. It really just connected to me in a big way.
Yeah, I'll tell you what. Actually, there's something hilarious about fish recently. Have you ever heard of the video game Endless Ocean?
No.
Oh, okay, there's Endless Ocean. Oh, it's hilarious. There was some guys who were playing. There's guys called Arun and Dan, and they do a show called Game Grumps, and there's one thing where they were like, looking at all the fish, and they found one fish which was a sea robin, and one of them just said, "Oh, hey, there's a sea robin. If we look hard enough, there might be a sea Batman." Like, it was just it was hilarious.
Wow.
Why I brought that up, I have no idea. But Just the only thing I can relate to fish. But in regards to Finding Nemo, yeah, the characters were brilliant to look at. I loved Marlin's whole motivation about wanting to keep his child super protected, and how he was afraid about what might happen to him, and then he had to pretty much come out of his comfort zone to go save him, to go save Nemo, and with Ellen DeGeneres also puts on a brilliant performance as Dory, and hence why she ended up with her own movie Finding Dory.
And you know what? That makes a lot more sense for a side character to have a movie of their own, as opposed to Larry the Cable Guy when he got Cars 2.
Yeah. So it was. I loved how Ellen. Would you say Ellen DeGeneres, outside of the film, gave Dory far more. I guess just far more. I'm trying to find the best word for it.
Character?
No. Far more grace than what Jared Leto did with the Joker when he was being the Joker the whole time. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I see what you mean.
Because it was irritating when Jared Leto did it, but when Ellen DeGeneres was being Dory on the Ellen show, and because you remember she had the voice actress on for who played Princess Anna in Frozen, and they had that whole exchange. That was fun.
And also she did the same thing for Tom Hanks. It's like we're gonna have an exchange between Dory and Woody. So that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was brilliant. But I like to think inside and outside of Finding Nemo and the Finding Dory universe, Ellen DeGeneres can have a lot of fun with that character. And when you got someone who's like that, I would not be surprised at all if they did a Finding. I don't know could we do a Finding Marlin? I guess would be the next one.
Yeah, right? Maybe Finding Marlin, Finding Crush. Let's see, Finding Mr. Ray.
Let's not give them too many ideas. One of them's bound to suck. So
True.
Okay. So that was our number 5 in our best Pixar film. So number 4, we gave it a score of 10 because we're mad, and now it has an average score of 9.25 out of 10. It is Ratatouille.
Yes. What a great movie that was. It was beautiful. It had a really interesting story, really likable characters, and just the overall atmosphere was just breathtaking.
It was romantic. I loved how romantic and beautiful it made Paris. And there were some people who telling me hey, Paris isn't really like that. It's a bit more rougher than that. And it's I probably imagine so. But in regards to how Pixar and how it's all imagined in the fantasy world, and I'm sure there's not talking rats in Paris, but I don't know. I don't know how far they've mutated in New York City. Maybe they might be talking rats when I get there. But in regards to that, but in regards to how Ratatouille was graphically done, and how it was sounded as well. The soundtrack was beautiful. The characters were lovely as well. And here's the thing as well. Ratatouille has been out for a very long time, and yet you watch it now and it feels like it hasn't aged. It still feels like it's in the now.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, especially when you look at the bright colors and you look at the character designs and you just listen to the amazing soundtrack, you get invested in the story. It just feels like it's still relevant.
Mm-hmm. So that was number 4 in our film, and we totally love it. I love shipping Linguini and Colette. I think I love that as well. I really hope that they do a sequel, and hopefully Colette will have a bun in the oven. See what I did there?
Yes, you are clever.
Okay. All right, number 3 in our top 5 Pixar films. We gave this an average score of 10, and now it has an average score of 9.5 out of 10. It is Monsters Incorporated.
Oh, that was actually a pretty big surprise because, I thought that it was going to be something else. But we did talk about how much we loved Monsters Inc. We love the universe that it was building up, and we loved the characters, and we loved the dynamic between Sully and Boo, and not to mention that it actually had a really interesting story to tie it around. I mean, when it comes to like building a universe, I think that it's definitely one of the best.
And I just think, also on top of that as well, the technology was getting better at that time. Like, you looked at Sully and you knew that he was a furry monster. And
Yeah, and they basically took that technology that they learned and they incorporated it to their other Pixar movies, from the water motion in Finding Nemo to the hair, Merida's hair in Brave.
yeah, but I looked at like all the bonus stuff that you get with the DVD, and I was looking at doing all the tech demos and how they were explaining it all, and it's like, my God, all the simulations they must have had to done to get that right. Like, that must have been painstaking work to do on top of that as well. And on top of that as well, even when they still had that technology, doing Violet's hair in The Incredibles was hard for them to do as well. Like yeah, it was. So that was So Monsters Inc. was groundbreaking in many ways.
Yeah, and also it had a very sweet dynamic between Sully and Boo. Like, you really felt for those characters. You like There's a reason why it's still remembered, and why people, when they saw that quote unquote Boo spin-off movie, that they are really invested in seeing that happen, and they wanted to see that happen.
Yeah, and on top of that as well, like, in talking about Boo herself, what they did for her was groundbreaking, because they followed her around with a microphone, and so she didn't really have to do like any proper acting. Like, her delivery was 100% natural.
Yeah,
when she was doing it.
That is true.
And the only other time I've actually seen that probably done is probably Fantastic Mr. Fox, when they got all the actors basically to act in the areas that they would be acting in. Like, it's like it's.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, I mean, they could have, they actually got a kid to voice as a kid. Mary Gibbs, who did the voice of Boo, was actually 3 years old when she did it. Nowadays, you don't really see too many kid characters anymore. I mean, you do see some exceptions, like, with the Peanuts movie and with the Jungle movie. And then, I think even with like when Adventure Time and Steven Universe were starting. And I think maybe in like Lincoln from the Loud House, but for the most part, all of the kids would be voiced by adults.
Mm-hmm.
So the fact that they were able to pull it off that well is like a monument to like dedicated like editing and timing, and it's just it's amazing.
Yeah. Okay, so that was number 3. Number 2 is, we gave it an average score of 10 out of 10, and now it has an average score of 9.75 out of 10. It is Toy Story 2.
Yes, and what an amazing accomplishment that Toy Story 2 was, because remember that Pixar was a new company at the time, and we didn't know if they could do a sequel very well, and because that Toy Story was such a monumental film, could it be just as good as the first movie? And guess what? It is. It's not only as good as the first movie, but it's even better than the first movie.
Yeah, I just think Toy Story 2 must have been Toy Story was a very hard act to follow.
Yes.
Without a shadow of a doubt. What they had with Toy Story was incredibly special, and because it did actually make me a little bit nervous when they said, okay, well, we're going to do this again, because as we all know, there seems to be this law that seems to go around now that the sequel is never as good as the original, and yet they seem to have taken the original and like just expanded it out. And maybe that was because do you think it's because they also made the world bigger as well? Because if you remember, we actually went to several locations in Toy Story 2, rather than being kind of boxed into only going on to Sid's house and Pizza Planet in Toy Story. And
I think so. I think that not only was there more areas to explore, but there were also more characters in the movie, and there were more sad backstories. The music was great. The technology had gotten better. There was a lot more at stake. Like literally with Woody learning about his backstory, that he was part of a 1950s variety show, and he's a collector's item, and that he was going to go to Japan to be put in a museum. And then there was also the struggle of whether to go with the toys to Japan or whether to stay with Andy, even though that eventually he's going to grow up and he may not want him anymore, which was a great follow-up to Toy Story 3.
But it's a big philosophical thing, isn't it? Because imagine if you and I were toys, And like, if we, what would we do? Would we want to take the chance with a new owner at a time, every single time someone grew up, or would we want to be in a museum where we'll just be admired behind glass the entire time? Like, it's like
Right.
it's a real, all the options that Woody had in front of him had its own pros and cons in a
Right.
way. And so it's like it would that you could see the legitimate difficulty in the decision that he had to make. When he had it, and obviously he made the decision that he did, and but I'm sure there's a lot of people who probably came away from that film thinking, I don't know, I don't think Woody really made the right decision. Like he maybe should have gone to the museum or something like that. Surprisingly, I have those debates with people in the pub. Like about Toy Story too. So it's still a movie that still is like I think the only other movie I could probably say that's had massive amounts of discussion around it would probably be The Big Lebowski. I probably think.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of interesting things to discuss about with Toy Story 2, like the fact that instead of in the first movie that Woody was helping Buzz, now Buzz was helping Woody, and not to mention that we do get more introductions towards different toys, more settings, and the climax in the movie is better than the original. I mean, in the original movie you had like the moving truck, but this time around you have the airport and you have a plane. So yeah, it's much bigger it's a much bigger climactic scene.
hmm How did you feel about Al as the antagonist? Like, we heard about Al. We always wonder. I guess we always wonder what Al was like. I guess in the first film when we heard about Al's toy barn.
Yeah,
And so,
I wouldn't say that. I mean, I wouldn't really make him. I wouldn't like. I mean, at first he does seem like he is the main antagonist, but then when you learn more about the prospector and about like his backstory, I think that he pretty much overshadows Al.
oh yeah. So
And then afterwards, Lotso came along, and he pretty much overshadows both him and Al and Sid combined.
hmm Okay, so that was definitely Toy Story 2, and we have to say it was, incredible to say the least. And so now we go on to what we think is probably the best Pixar film. So this had a score. We gave it a score of 10, and also our mystery judge, who is Dan the Pixar Man, also gave it a score of 10, and put it at the top of the ranking board. And so it's basically 10 out of 10. It's Toy Story.
The original, yes.
Yep.
I mean, the original, the one that started it all, the classic. I mean, for many people, they say that even with all the movies that had came out of Pixar afterwards, nothing just tops the original. And I can see why, because it was such a monumental film. A lot of people were kids when they first saw it. The first 3D animated film, it built up a sense of wonder and awe that I don't think can ever be replicated again. It's still an incredible movie.
hmm And so I totally, I guess I totally agree with that. And I mean, I'm trying to think of what could we say about Toy Story that we haven't already given praise for Toy Story.
I mean, there's not really much to say. I mean,
yeah.
it's a nearly flawless movie. I can't really find anything to complain about other than just some minor nitpicks. Like I guess that the graphics and the technology hadn't aged very well compared to like the later Pixar movies, but you have to give it a break because it was the very first of its kind. It's like Reboot, in which a lot of people praise it as like one of the very first animated CGI TV series, and it's dated as hell, but a lot of people love it for everything else. So
Yeah, and we can definitely say this: the Toy Story looks a lot better. Also, tops reboots as well as looking a lot better. And
yes, that is true, especially
it pushed
since
the volume.
yeah, it does. Yeah, and I think they both came out around the same time too.
So it's just it's like the characters were brilliant. The music was also brilliant. Randy Newman obviously knocked it out of the park again as well. And it was just mind you, it was like I think Randy Newman he after he did Toy Story, I think after that he did James and the Giant Peach. I think he did after that.
Yes, he did do James and the Giant Peach.
And
Yes,
that's a bit of a mixed bag, really, in regards to the songs he wrote for that. But in regards to
I mean, yeah, I think that you can say that a lot for like Randy Newman songs, in which there's a lot of songs that are great, and then there's some songs that are like, it's all right.
Yeah. Here's
there's
the
some
thing about,
songs.
I would say in defense of Randy Newman though, it's like I think if he was told, oh well, we need a song number for this, but even though it doesn't really make much sense, it's like I don't think he's going to say no if he's going to get if he's going to get paid at the end for writing them. So
Yeah. I think that I listened to an episode of Talking Tunes with Rob Paulson where Jim Cummings, well-known voice actor, he was doing Ray in The Princess and the Frog, and he told him to do a song for Ray, with the Zydeco, which is like this Cajun washboard, and he's like, "Hey, can you please write a song because it's New Orleans, and you need to have a song like that." And then Randy's like, "Yeah, sure, no problem." And then he wrote the song, and then that was how Going Down the Bayou came about.
hmm So it's a massive, huge amount of praise we want to give this film. It basically kicked off Pixar and gave us all the rest of the film. So it's pretty much it's the primordial soup that basically all the other films came out of, pretty much.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, it spun 2 amazing sequels. It had a great animated series. They have Toy Story Land over in Disney World. And we're gonna get Toy Story characters in Kingdom Hearts 3. So we are getting Toy Story 4. So the franchise is strong, and it wouldn't be this strong if the foundation wasn't great, and Toy Story is no exception.
Interestingly enough, though, I would like to see, obviously Toy Story 3 at the moment is, at least on paper, is the most successful of the Toy Story films. I'd be interested to see to make up for inflation. Like how it's because obviously there's a difference between a Toy Story film coming out now than there is a Toy Story film coming out back in 1994 or something like that. I'd be interested to see how in regards to inflation, how well Toy Story actually did compared to Toy Story 3.
That is a really interesting point. That's
if someone could work that out for us, leave it in the comment section below, and
yes, please do so.
Yeah. So that was so. That's pretty much it. It's like Toy Story is the best Pixar film, according to me, you, and Dan the Pixar Fan. So whether you can debate that, you can leave that in the comment section below, and if you can do that, then that's great. So
and I take it that the honorable mentions were
we'll
go
to
The
the honorable mentions.
Incredibles and Toy Story 3.
I'll give you the list so no one gets missed out. The honorable mentions are Inside Out, Toy Story 3, The Incredibles, and Coco.
Those were all excellent movies, by the way.
Yeah, that
was like, I mean, let's be honest. I mean, it's not like they didn't deserve to be in the top 5 list. It's just that it had a lot of competition, and all of those are fantastic movies in their own right.
Mm-hmm. And I just think it's, mind you, all these Pixar films in some way, shape, or form have captured the hearts of people. And I think that's kind of what's important at the end of the day. I'm really glad that there's a studio out there that can take people's emotions, take people's fun, take people's expectations, and just run with them. And yes, there are some films in there that are complete stinkers, and we're not gonna lie about that. But then you look at films that are like Monsters Incorporated, like Ratatouille, like Finding Nemo, like The Incredibles, like Toy Story, like Inside Out, like Up and WALL-E, and things like that. And they reach out to people, and they make them feel emotions that they never felt before. And as well, Inside Out and Finding Dory made people cry.
Yes,
that's hard to do.
And Coco made us cry too.
Yeah, and I don't know. I would say, Coco made quite a few people cry as well. And I did get emotional when Miguel sang "Remember Me" to Mama Coco. But in regards to Dory finally finding her parents, and also Riley pouring her heart out in the middle. And keep this in mind, like when you really think about it, in the way the Inside Out world works, it's like it's just it's these emotions kind of controlling this kind of like this kind of like ship, if anything, like
Sure.
and even then, like you still have you still see Riley as Riley. And
yes.
Because they made her feel so real with her emotions alongside them. And when she just broke down, everyone else did as well. I watched Inside Out twice, and in both theaters, everyone was crying.
Aww.
Yeah, it's like there was no difference between the two. It was exactly the same reactions. It was quite interesting to really enthralling, to say the least.
Yeah,
So.
and let's just see where The Incredibles 2 lands in the list in the future.
So, I'm interested to see what average score, these Pixar films have actually garnered. We're looking at it. Let me see if I can. So, sorry everybody, I'm going to be doing some Excel calculations whilst we're doing this because I'm actually intrigued by this. So, if
All
we
right,
do
so
if
while Aaron's doing that,
we do an
I guess I
average,
can. Yeah, while Aaron's doing that, I guess I can briefly discuss about my favorite Pixar shorts. So, with not going into any particular order because we'll be here all day. Let's see. Let's see. My favorite Pixar shorts have been. Let's see. Um, that's really tough because
well,
a
what
lot of
even
them are there's a lot of them that are like really good.
I like Lifted.
Yeah, Lifted was good. Lifted, let's see, Partly Cloudy was also really sweet. Day and Night is my favorite out of all of them.
Hmm.
Sanjay Super Team was amazing. I really like that.
Well, despite what some people say, I actually like Lava. I think Lava's a
Yeah, I
sweet
don't know.
short.
I mean, I thought it was like really cute. I mean, I have no idea where all the hate came from.
I think it's because I don't know. I still think someone out there's like had a traumatic experience with a volcano. I tell you what, all those people in Hawaii right now, yeah, I could probably say they're not very fond of volcanoes right about now.
Yes, we're very sorry for everybody in Hawaii who's going through a volcano. We're very sorry.
Yeah. We just want to. Yeah, I think we should probably just say that. But yeah, I
Yeah.
think that's probably where some of the hate comes from. I guess for lava, but
Yeah, probably. Boundin was also a lot of fun. It had like this really cool story with the lamb and trying to accept the fact that he doesn't have any wool. Some of the classic Pixar shorts were actually really nice. I mean, they're kind of like they were basically like the technology of CGI and 3D animation in its infancy, but at the same time it was recognized for a reason, and this was like when looking into it, it's pretty impressive of what they did. Like, Luxo Jr., which has become the Pixar logo, and it's remembered for a reason. Like I said before, I remember seeing it when I was a kid watching it on Sesame Street.
what's
And
the one? There was another one which was I can't remember the name of it. It was about a unicycle who was like fantasizing about being in the circus.
that's Red's Dream.
Red's Dream, yeah. What did you think of that one? It's like,
It's fine. It's pretty okay.
yeah, I think it had a unique style. I
Yeah, it
think.
definitely did.
Yeah.
Knick Knack is probably like the best out of the classic because the snowman who's trying to get it, trying to get closer to like the woman in the summer snow globe. I think that technically with like story wise, I think that's the best one in the classic sense.
Probably the groundbreaking one was probably the one with what's the one? The one with the bee. I can't remember the name of it.
Oh, Andre and Wally B.
Andre and Wally B. Yeah, I think.
Yeah,
I think
that was their very first one, so it's definitely the most groundbreaking and most important out of all of them. Yes.
yeah. So I think that was that was proof of life of 3D technology. I think at that point so you can create something like that. And,
Yes, and Tin Toy is also very important too because not only did it get them an Academy Award for Best Animated Short and got them like a lot of recognition among Steve Jobs to start Pixar, but it was the precursor to Toy Story.
was there? There's a rumor they're going around that they actually want to make a Tin Toy.
Yeah,
Movie.
it's true because in Digino Movies when they were discussing about Toy Story. They were going to make a movie based off of Tin Toy, but they wanted to expand the toys and all that stuff, so they pretty much just scrapped it. And then they did Toy Story. There were a lot of other titles, which I found one of them really hilarious. One of the original titles was going to be like Toys in the Hood. But yeah, it's true. They were originally going to make like what was it, like a 35-minute movie based off of Tin Toy, but then they did Toy Story instead.
Yeah. So I've worked this out now, and so I'm going to do a bit of rounding up as well. The whole Pixar franchise, the way that we've scored it, basically it's worked out to about 7 out of 10.
Yeah, that seems to be pretty fair because there were some fantastic Pixar movies, but then there's some middle of the road, and then there's some pretty bad ones. So yeah, that's pretty fair.
Yeah, cool. So, for those of you thinking this is the end of PixMix, oh no, it is not. Me and Patricia are going to be seeing The Incredibles 2 together in Florida, and so once we're done with that, and once we'll be able to get back into our respective locations, we'll be doing a massive review for it. So there is still definitely still a PixMix review left to go, and where it fits in all amongst all the other Pixar films that we've reviewed, well, that's going to be interesting to see where we go with that. And also on top of that, in regards to PixMix itself, I mean, Pixar isn't out of business at the moment. I mean, it's not been eaten up by Disney, so like some of the other places have been. So I think, in regards to like PixMix, maybe once, it'll end up being kind of like just a once in a blue moon, I guess.
I mean,
we'll be doing
like for example, we still have the Buzz Lightyear animated series, and we still haven't covered all of the Toy Story shorts yet.
Well, on top of that as well, there's still 5 unnamed projects currently going on for Pixar at the moment, and
yeah, that is true.
Yeah, I really hope one of them's a Ratatouille sequel.
Yeah, that'd be great. Or an Up prequel, or
an Up prequel. Yeah,
there's so many possibilities. Or Inside Out 2. I want Inside Out 2.
I think yeah. Well, they were teasing Inside Out 2 in the final act, weren't they? Pretty much with that.
Yeah, they were, but it could be like the case of Finding Nemo and The Incredibles. I mean, if they were to take a 15-year hiatus, I wouldn't be surprised if they did do that.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think it wouldn't surprise me if the next poster I see is basically that giant puberty button, for Inside Out. So, and that's basically what that's going to be the next. Yeah, I can just see it coming. Like, all the awkwardness that a teenage girl would go through and
that would be great. I would love that.
Everyone would relate to it.
Yes.
I think, and so yeah, they should definitely do that. But anyway, until then, I am Aaron.
And I am Patricia.
Thanks for listening to PixMix all the way up to now, and hopefully we'll have that Incredibles 2 review up very soon. But for all of us now, take care, and bye-bye for now.
Catch you later.